So I'm now just going to replace the water cooling fittings so that they match, and I've got some new tubing as well because this stuff's a little bit it's a little bit off colour. So these are the previous fittings. We've got some PC branded components there, and there's some other ones, and it's just a bit of a hodgepodge, including this agricultural 90-degree bend fitting, which surprisingly works really well, but it looks pants. So the first challenge is going to be to drain this all. Now you'll notice that the level of water is above the level of this top output. So if I were to just pull this tube out, we're going to have water coming from the tube and the reservoir, the radiator located up there, but also from the reservoir. So what I'm firstly going to do is siphon some out with a straw. Now this straw has an extra long flexible bit, so I can twist it into a more convenient position. And hopefully by applying this to the reservoir, I should be able to empty it out sufficiently that there's not too much water left in the main tube. So you can see we've got the siphon working, the straw's in there, and it's emptying out into there. You can see nearly all the water has disappeared out of the reservoir, which is exactly what I was hoping to see. Now I've got the reservoir pretty much emptied. I've got the radiator pretty much emptied. I've taken this tube off and emptied it down into this container of water. And I've put an accessory tube onto this so that when I blow this, all the water will hopefully clear out the rest of the system. The important thing to know when to do that is to ensure that your fill port on your reservoir is closed. If you blow air into it, it's just going to come out the top and potentially make a bit of a mess, which is something we don't want. So we have a novel problem with the graphics card water block. You can see what I've had to do previously is I have a barb, a bit of tubing, and then go into a 90-degree angle. And the reason why I've had to employ that arrangement is because the water block is sufficiently far away from the top of the card that a standard 90-degree fitting such as this is not going to fit. There's just too much depth needed. So what I have got in answer to that problem is one of these. This is just a little extender. It's got a threaded screw at one end, threaded at the other, male to female, and by employing this on the end of the 90-degree connector here, it means that the hose fitting will come beyond the end of the card. And here is the GPU here with its two fittings. We can see the extenders that we've got in place here and here, and then the standard 90-degree black chrome fittings on two 1/2-inch barbs. One half of the radiator connectors fitted. We can see we've got a male to male threaded connector up there. We've got the temperature sensor in line here, and then a 1/2-inch barb. That sort of replaces what I had here, where I have the connectors, a tube connecting two barbs together, then the temperature sensor, and then another barb, and then the rest of the tubing. So this is just one side done, but I think that looks a lot more efficient. And here is the second fitting with the inline temperature sensor module. Now it's time to put the tubing on, and this is what I've got: XSPC FLX premium 2 meters tubing. Here is the completed loop. Astute viewers will realize that this is not full of water, which is going to be the next step. Unfortunately, when I started to fill this, virtually every connector leaked, so which is a real disappointment because that wasn't a problem that I had previously, and I presume it's something to do with the barbs. I don't think that they create a very good seal. So what I'm going to do in the interim is I've got some black cable ties, and I'm just going to tighten the tops of these of the tubing off with cable ties. Now this is obviously not an ideal situation to be in, but I think this is probably the best fix that I can come up with in the meantime. These black cable ties that I've got are very strong, they're very solid, and they're very tight, so hopefully this means that I won't get any leaks. Take two. Now to try and refill everything, you'll see I've got cable ties on all of the tubes acting as clamps. It's an unsatisfactory thing to have, but hopefully it'll work. It's the best I can do at this point. this is not what we want to see. I tried filling it up from the radiator end and unfortunately everything leaks. So it seems that these barbs here, these XSPC half-inch barbs, are just useless. So I'm going to have to put my old barbs back on. So out with the new and in with the old. I've got these old copper coloured barbs that I used previously. I just happen to have exactly enough. So I'm going to try and fill it and see what happens with these barbs. Alright, so I'm finally ready to start testing. You may be wondering about the light, the fact that it's a whole lot darker and I'm having to use a flash on my phone to record this. Well, unfortunately outside it has turned from a lovely Wellington day into an awful Wellington day. So all set to go. I've got these new barbs in, I've cleaned up all the leaks, and what I'm going to do to test it is I have one of these little jumper leads attached to the power supply unit, and the only other thing connected is the pump. So none of the computer is going to be turned on, just the power supply is going to be running and the pump. This will mean that if it does leak, there's not going to be any risk of anything getting damaged. There's only one little leak, and that was yet again the CPU input tube. So I put a cable tie on that, and it seems to have resolved that. I'm going to keep an eye on it though. Unfortunately, this is probably all I can do today because the weather outside is just getting awful, and you probably can't hear me. We're now going through the bleeding process. This is where just by running the system, we simply get rid of all the air leaks. It can take half an hour or so for this to completely happen, and it all depends on how well you've filled it up previously. But considering that the air bubbles in my particular loop all need to come out the reservoir there, and that isn't the highest point, it will take a little bit longer with this particular system because the air bubbles are naturally going to want to congregate at the highest point, which is up in the radiator. Still doing some more in the bleeding and leak testing process. This is where we're at right now. You can sort of see the speed of the water going through the loop. Most of the air has bled out. There's just a few more bubbles, a few more pockets there. So another wee while and that should be all bled out. I've had to top up the reservoir a couple of times because the water has gone through the system and the air's come out through there as is intended. But I don't think I'll have to top it up again with the amount of air that's left in here. There's been absolutely no leaks that I have observed, so that's excellent as well. And here we are a little bit later, the sun's come out again, so that's quite nice. And all the air has bled out of the system. It's a lot quieter, no leaks, which is great. So it's going to be time now to put this back where it belongs.